Well, yesterday on the program, we had Premier Heather Stephenson in with us, and she was asked whether or not she'd make an early election call, and she said the election will be October 3rd. So as we are waiting for our provincial election here in this province, in Alberta, the campaigning has begun, and each candidate there has tried to paint the other as a radical. On the right, Alberta Premier and UCP leader Danielle Smith. On the left, NDP leader and former Premier Rachel Notley. And they might be politically polar opposites, but their provincial election is now 4 weeks away, and apparently it is too close to call. So we wanted to dig into what's going on. Joining us to talk about it is Duane Bratt. He's a professor of political science at Mount Royal University. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how long have these two, Notley and Smith, been sparring?
Since October 6th. That was the day that Danielle Smith won the UCP leadership race in the aftermath of Jason Kenney's resignation. And so really, it's been that day, much more so than May 1st, that the election campaign really kicked off.
What's your sense of things right now? How do voters view, first of all, Danielle Smith?
So given the state of the economy, which has significantly rebounded, as well as sort of the conservative nature of Alberta, particularly the city of Calgary, the UCP with a generic leader should be on the verge of re-election. The fact that it is too close to call is all about unease that people have with Danielle Smith, particularly conservatives. When she was Wild Rose leader in 2012, she stole defeat away from victory in that election with a series of bozo eruptions. And it looks like that may be playing a role again this time. That first press conference she held in October, when she referred to the unvaccinated as the most discriminated group she's ever seen in her lifetime, or promising that she would provide pardons and amnesty to those convicted of COVID charges, and then having to walk that back when she realized that Canadian premiers don't have that power that U.S. governors do. And then most recently, there was a leaked telephone conversation she had with a very controversial street preacher from Calgary by the name of Art Pozlowski, where she seemed very sympathetic to his legal struggles and promised that her office would look into his case. Well, yesterday in Lethbridge, Pawlowski was convicted on 3 charges, serious charges, of inciting violence during the Coots blockade in February of 2022. And so it's been those series of missteps that has caused Smith problems. And as a result, this election is really tight.
And what about Notley? How is she being viewed right now by voters?
In general, her approval ratings are higher than the party. She is seen as more likable, but there are questions about her time as premier. Those were not good days economically in the province. She racked up $70 billion in debt, introduced a carbon tax. There are those that are trying, particularly the UCP, trying to tie her into Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, who are not popular in this province. And so and they've got a branding issue. Albertans like the conservative brand. They don't like the NDP brand. So the way that I have simplified it is, if voters vote on party, the UCP gets reelected. If they vote on leader, then the NDP will get elected.
Why would you say that this election should matter to people outside of Alberta?
For a variety of reasons, mostly, it's a large province. It's a major economic driver, but it's about Danielle Smith. Back in the fall, she passed what she called the Sovereignty Act, which would allow the legislature to unilaterally determine what was in federal jurisdiction and what was in provincial jurisdiction, and they could direct people to violate federal laws. She has written mandate letters to her ministers calling for the pulling out of the Canadian pension plan. That would have repercussions right across the country. And a lot of those more controversial items she's not talking about. They've been put on the back burner. But if Smith wins, I expect that those would be front and center come June and July. And she is surrounded by some supporters who I would call quasi-separatists.
She, of course, doesn't answer a lot of questions. She'll refuse questions, and then she put that. She had that press conference where she said she's only allowing reporters one question, no follow-ups. So she's all kinds of
Because she
different
gets
things.
into trouble. She's an old radio host, so she knows how to talk. But the problem is, when you're the premier, you need to be a lot more disciplined. And so when she was a talk show host, she would have controversial topics on, and then the next day there'd be a new topic. But in this case, it carries over. And so as a result, I think they're going to try to limit her exposure because she gets into trouble when she starts speaking off the cuff, as I've given some examples of that.
If she wins, what do you think it says about the tone of politics in this country, or where we could all be heading potentially, in terms of the fact that she's found a lot of support?
Yeah, that really does suggest a change, and it's going to be so close here. I'm not sure this is a winning strategy. I mean, the Conservatives won over 60 seats in 2019. With a generic leader, they could come close to that, or at least in the mid 50s. The fact that it's so close, even if she wins, she'll have dropped their vote total. So I'm not sure this is a strategy that other politicians may want to emulate.
Well, we will be watching. We have our own provincial election coming up in the fall as well. Thank you very much for your analysis of what's going on in Alberta.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
That's Duane Bratt, Professor of Political Science at Mount Royal University.